Welcome, everybody. It's fantastic to see you here today. This is the biggest day of the San Diego Grantmakers year, and it's the most fun because there are more of you together in one room than we ever have, and that's fun. In a stroke of what I will call brilliance, Linda Spuck and the conference committee came up with Through the Looking Glass, Reflections on Philanthropy as just the right theme to capture what we wanted our day together to be about. I would now like to introduce the speakers, and as I say their name, I'll have them come up and sit in our little chairs here at the front. Our topic for the morning plenary is a time for philanthropic introspection. First, I'd like to welcome Brad Smith. He's the president of the Foundation Center, a national nonprofit service organization recognized as the nation's leading authority on organized philanthropy. Gianna Campoamor is president of Hispanics in Philanthropy. It's a network of philanthropists that work with Grantmakers to strengthen Latino communities. Deidre Lind is the executive director of the Mattel Children's Foundation and philanthropy programs for Mattel. Last but not least is our moderator and speaker, Sean Stannard-Stockton. Sean is the CEO of Tactical Philanthropy Advisors, a philanthropy advisory firm that serves individual and family philanthropists.
I don't think that you can reflect on the recent past without thinking about the recession. I mean, it's the dominant feature of the past couple of years. And one thing I think that philanthropy doesn't always fully recognize is that recessions actually hit us harder than the for-profit sector. Because a recession is characterized by a drop in demand for services, and that's what drives down the business in the for-profit world. But demand for nonprofit services go up in recessions. And the most important thing I think it gives an opportunity for us to do, because it forces us to, is to focus. It focuses us to recognize that our resources are limited and that the demand for what we do is far greater than that which we can supply. And therefore, the only sensible approach is to focus as much as possible on those things that are important to us. And now I'm going to turn to each of the panelists who will offer their take on where we have been and where we should go. Thank you very much.
And every single time, every single recession, and we have lots of research and lots of data at the Foundation Center, we went back and looked at this. Every single time, philanthropy has come roaring back. And every single year, there are more new foundations created. The second point is that we live in a world and a future in which the way social change will happen is increasingly networked. If you look at the way social change is being produced, it's being produced by institutionalized foundations as we know them, the ones that have an address and have a door and somewhere you can send an application. It's being produced by online giving platforms, which have proliferated tremendously. The third point I wanted to make is just the revolution in digital technology. Revolutions change everything. That's the definition of a revolution. And digital technology is changing everything. Virtually everything is digitized, and we simply know much more about many more things and have much more information and tools to do our jobs at our disposal. I think the fourth major factor I see is that philanthropy itself is evolving from we evolved from giving money, which is sort of the traditional form of American philanthropy, to a concept of social investment. But I really think the next phase of that evolution is going to be managing information and producing knowledge. And then lastly, the other major force I wanted to talk about, which is the globalization of philanthropy. And there's several factors that are leading to this. One is that the challenges which we confront, the kinds of problems we deal with every day, whether they be immigration, job creation, national security, climate change, these are not problems that you can easily draw borders around. The second factor there is that a lot of the new money that's coming in to philanthropy, different than an earlier generation, is not necessarily place-based. It's not somebody who maybe perhaps made their fortune in a business in a locality. They might have made their business in a virtual world by creating something online that people anywhere use. As we begin to think about how to address some of these global challenges we all face, our networking and our partnerships will sometimes not just take us across town or across the state or maybe across a state border, but will also take us across the world. Thank you.
How many of you watched the mesmerizing rescue of the people from the mines? And how many of you saw when one of the miners said to the president, "I am a changed man," and the president said, "And we are a changed country as a result of this"? It made me think, wow, you know, this is a classic example of how you turn adversity into opportunity, right? What was it about the oil spill, or what is it about the Great Recession that somehow we're not putting that meaning, we're not stepping up to come together like Chile did? My goal is that we can take, you know, some of the suggestions that Catherine Fulton and that, you know, those reports and many of the reports that all of you are writing, and that we can use that, you know, as our own metaphor for how we're going to come together and bring communities that are marginalized, bring the ones that are inside the mine out and find, you know, the shining moment of building community. Because, you know, world peace is not going to happen because we win the next war. World peace is going to happen because communities like this are going to find models of collaboration where people really believe that they're either going to prosper together or they're going to fail.
And I want to start with a story about Lifebuoy soap, which is a brand of soap which is held in the company of consumer products that Unilever owns. Unilever is a company that's based in Europe. And Lifebuoy soap was doing incredibly well in Europe, and the marketing folks for that particular brand of soap decided that they wanted to expand their market reach to new markets, to new countries in particular. And they sort of started to hone their sights on India. They really saw some great opportunity in India. But there were a couple barriers for them in terms of entering that market. And one was simply the price of their soap. The size and the price of the soap that they were selling in Europe was simply too expensive for the average consumer in India. But they realized that there was a tremendous number of folks, particularly in rural communities across the country, that didn't have any access to soap at all. And in fact, that was a life-threatening issue. So they worked with their corporate responsibility folks to solve this social problem and look at this as a business opportunity. They did a couple of things. First, they did a Train the Trainer program where they actually went into small rural villages across the country and they actually trained women in those villages on proper hand washing techniques. The second thing they did was they did a microloaning program. They actually gave these women bars of soap, and they allowed those women to go and sell those bars of soap to their fellow villagers. Those women were allowed to keep a percentage of the profits of the selling of that soap, and then they also turned back a percentage of those profits back to Unilever. Well, fast forward 5 years, they've sold over 2.6 billion, with a B, bars of soap. Unilever has an incredible new revenue model, right? And there are millions, if not billions of people, millions I would say, in India who now have access to soap who never had access before. Really brilliant opportunity, I think, to be able to solve a social issue and at the same time make business sense, right? Cone Research, Cone consulting firm based on the East Coast, recently did some research or released some research that said that more than 80% of consumers actually want the companies to be making a social difference and to be involved with social causes. That's just, to us, I think, in the industry, just a reminder of the fact that people expect this from us. And this is another new opportunity for philanthropy, I think. And I think myself and most of my peers, we've never been the ones to sit at the table as part of when business strategy is being discussed, right? They're talking about the growth of the business and how does it get there, and philanthropy is not a part of that discussion generally. So what we've done over the past year is make philanthropy a part of that discussion, and that's because we think philanthropy can add to that business strategy. The last thing I'll say, and this has been touched by the other speakers as well, is really the need for collaboration. If we're really talking about not just funding social issues, but making impact on social issues, I think all of us are humble enough to realize we can't do that by ourselves. And if we're really talking about social change, then we need to leverage all that we do together and all of the assets that we bring, the knowledge, the value of our brands and who we are, and research to really together come about social change.
So since all of you mentioned in one way or another the need for us to collaborate and be adaptable, I was hoping all of you could talk a little bit about how we embrace that creative attention, how we do both or choose to only do one. Because I don't think we can just say, let's collaborate and be adaptable and then call it a day. So Brad, do you want to go first and take that question? Yeah.
Collaboration should be a means, and it should be a preferred form of working when the specific challenge you're addressing requires it. So I don't think it's neither or, but I would always link it to what it is you're trying to achieve and let the goal really determine what the right form of working is.
I want to introduce another subject which hasn't been touched that I know is a concern for all of us. And to bring it back to collaboration, not only among funders, but how do we collaborate, with the groups that we fund? How do we really establish, partnership? I think regional associations are wonderful platforms, for example, for greater industry-wide accountability and dialogue with leaders of the community, not only, nonprofit leaders, but up-and-coming leaders.
How might Grantmakers have a role in helping that shifting mindset from value extraction to value creation in the corporate sector?
I think that for us to move to, I think for nonprofits to help us to think about moving forward, it requires, I think, nonprofits to think about really that asset piece of the business. And I think all of us need help thinking about what is it that company knows and where can they really expand their value. And that's where they can start to be proactive, right? It's not about kind of cleaning up the messes, but it's about taking what we as a company know and expanding that into social impact.
Instead of being afraid, what have we got to lose? Let's go for it. Let's think about how much riskier, we can be. So let's be contrarian.
We have a large Hispanic population in San Diego, but not a lot of Hispanics in organized philanthropy. What can we do to better engage and to bring people in?
I think the first thing is, they have to be identified, they have to be reached, they have to be, respected where they are. And I think we need to expand our definition of philanthropy. Philanthropy is about giving. Latinos, poor Latinos, are givers. And, this idea that you have to be a Gates or a Rockefeller or so on, my mantra, and in a sense, one of our core businesses is to change the portrayal of Latinos so that we are seen as the givers that we are, instead of takers. And I think, organized philanthropy has a fabulous role to play in that.
I do just want to make the last comment that whether it's collaboration or adaptability or any of the suggestions that you've heard up here, what I hope you take away is that coming out of the recession, the goal is not to rebuild that which we had, but to build something better, to leave behind those things that weren't the best, and to build something through our adaptability, through our collaboration, that is better than what we had before the recession. So thank you all very much.